Good morning, everyone, and welcome to CAE Forum. Actually, I think it's afternoon on the East Coast, so good afternoon to those of you that are on the East Coast. So first, can I get you guys to type the name of the school that you were from in the chat window? We do this because we kind of like to see where everybody's coming from. Also, it's in the chat window, but if you guys have any questions at all during this presentation, please leave them in the chat window. Your mics have been disabled, so you really aren't going to be able to talk at all. So if you have any questions, I will address them at the end, and I will mainly be looking at the chat window. So let's see where we have some people from. Okay, Carnegie Mellon, Bellevue, Virginia Tech. Texas A&M. I actually have some friends right now at Virginia Tech. That's pretty cool, doing a Facebook code pack course with them. And also, before we begin, I want to tell you guys that we are looking for CAE Forum presenters in spring of 2018. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, or even if you guys as students are interested in, please let us know and we'll get them a slot. So let's go ahead and get started. I know that you guys, or I know that Brian sent out the description of today's talk, but I just kind of want to go over a little bit about what today's talk is going to be about. So I'm very, very passionate about open source intelligence. It's something I've done a lot of studying in, a lot of research in, and over time I've become very, very, very good at it. And it's something that I think everybody should have a skill in, especially in cybersecurity, because it just seems like more and more people are putting personal information out there that can be exploited by scammers and even hackers. So today's conversation is really going to dive into that. So let's get going. So first, I want to talk a little bit about me, just so you guys kind of get where I'm coming from. I have a bachelor's in criminal justice. I did a lot of studies in that, in criminology, victimology, things like that. And then I also have a master's in national security studies. And somewhere during that time period, I decided that I wanted to learn about cybersecurity. So then I took all these cybersecurity courses, and then the quarter after I graduated, they came out with the Masters of National Cybersecurity Studies. So it's just my luck. But during the same time period, I also did a lot of studies in intelligence methodology and geographic information systems. So I kind of have my hands in a bunch of different topics and areas. But this one being probably one of the most important and meaningful ones to me. So first, I always like to start off with what is open source intelligence, especially when we talk about what it means for cybersecurity. Not a lot of people know. I think they have this general idea because we hear open source thrown around all the time in technology. And a lot of times when we're talking about open source, it's going to be like open source software or open source code and things of that nature. But open source information is just as powerful and just as usable, I would say, as open source code and open source software. So what is open source intelligence? Well, open sources are pretty much anything that you can get that's not behind a user login on the internet. It's things like books, journal articles, TV, radio, all of that stuff, right? Those are all open sources that you and I have access to. Like I said, as long as it's not behind a login, or as long as we have the access to get that. Intelligence is kind of really one of those gray areas, right? It means a lot of things to different people, but for the purposes of my studies and everything that I've done in national security studies, intelligence means the information that you get through the process of collection, processing, and analysis. So it's that whole process together, right? Information isn't intelligence, because we don't really have anything from information. But when you have information and you have data and you do some research and you put some thought and time into it, that is what becomes intelligence. And so how the two meet is really really looking at how we can use open sources to provide us with useful information. And this is information that's actionable, information that we can do things with, right? And so there's a lot of different ways open source intelligence can be used in cybersecurity, and that's primarily what I'm going to be talking with you guys about today. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm hoping that they can. I'm seeing somebody said audio issue. So I always I always have this question. Cool story, bro, but why should I care? Why should I care about open source intelligence at all? And my answer to that, these slides are kind of out of order, is this. The reason why we should care is because hackers and scammers care. That's why. Every single year that I've gone to DEF CON, one of the fastest growing villages, let me go back here, is Recon Village. And at Recon Village, all that we talk about here is how to exploit the information that people or individuals are giving away freely. And it's really powerful when you hear a bunch of people, I mean, most of them are hackers, come together and talk about the way that they exploit people's information. And it's publicly available information. It's information that individuals are putting online. And it really speaks volumes to how the trends are going to be going in the future and how we're going to see open sources being used in the future. So I always encourage any type of professor that's teaching cybersecurity to at least cover some aspect of open source intelligence to their students, because especially in my generation and the younger generation, it seems like more and more young people constantly put very, very private and very, very personal information that can and will be used against them by people like me and by people that are worse than me, to exploit their vulnerabilities. And so this is a topic that I think needs a lot more attention and time, and that more and more people need to be real aware of what they're putting out. So let's continue. So a lot of people think that gathering data is hard, but it's really not today. You start off in the OSINT workflow with one topic, one name, a telephone number, an address. And the cool thing about, the scary thing about the way the world works today is all you need is that one piece of information, be it a name, be it a telephone number, and you can instantly start finding a bunch of different things about this individual, about this company, about this process online. All you have to do is type it in and know where to look and how to look, and you can instantly find a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And for this talk, I'm primarily going to be talking about the simple things that you can find online, but we start getting into deeper open source stuff like using Wireshark to look at packets and things like that. It becomes even more lucrative and complex, right? So again, I just want you to have this picture of the OSINT workflow as being, you can start off with one thing and instantly you can end up with several different facts of information that can be useful to your analysis, your attack, or whatever you're trying to do against an individual or a company. So I also should have said, part of my background has also been researching individuals' information from different companies that I've been asked to do, and then letting them know how much of that information exposes that company or creates a risk for that company because of that individual. So let's continue. One of the things that I also like to talk about when we're thinking about open source intelligence is privacy, especially in cybersecurity, because I think when we talk about information privacy and privacy, we're really talking about two different things. Everybody kind of assumes that they have this right to privacy in the United States, but anybody that's done anything in political science knows there is no concrete right to privacy in the Constitution at all. It exists through numerals in the Bill of Rights and things like that, but there is no absolute right to privacy. And when we think about information privacy, that even becomes more obscure, right? Because when we think of the right to privacy, we think of the right to be secure in our own persons and alone when we choose to be alone. So that means if tonight I decide I just want to stay in, I can stay in, and no one's going to see me, no one's going to hear from me, I don't have to talk to anybody. Information privacy isn't like that, right? It's not like I can just turn off my computer and my information disappears. That's not the way it works, sadly. So really, while we kind of still cling to that idea of privacy, information privacy is something that is non-existent. Once the information's out there, it is out there forever. And this is why I continually say we need to be teaching young people that, right? If information's out there, it's going to be out there forever, and it will be used against you. Another thing that I also hear about in relation to privacy and information privacy is all these privacy arguments. Well, I'm especially, this is something I hear from students all the time. I post things. I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I don't have anything to hide. And what's scary about that is you might think that you have nothing to hide, But the truth about that is, how many times are we seeing in the media about people getting fired because they posted something that was negative against their boss, or people not being offered a job because a DUI came up in their past history? I mean, these are all scary, scary things that affect the future. And I don't think enough young people are thinking about the future to think, hey, is this going to hinder my chances of employment in the future? So that's something that we definitely need to be cognizant of and sharing with our students and ourselves as well when we think about information that we're giving away. So I like, when I go back to my criminology background here, I'm really interested in, and I really focus a lot of my research into how open sources is being exploited by people in everyday lives. So this is a really interesting case for me anyways. Autumn Matacchiera, I know I just probably slaughtered her last name, and I'm sorry, but I think it was last year, or almost a year ago, that she allegedly threw a 5-year-old girl in front of a train. And this made news. It was a pretty big story at the time. And what was fascinating to me about it was, within hours of this news story, she received so much hate on her Twitter. I mean, her Facebook completely shut down, and she even had a private blog that talked all about mental illness and her experiences with it. But there was already people out there that were posting negative and hurtful information, you know, towards this individual. Now, I'm not even going to talk about her crime, which, again, she allegedly did it. I don't know. I haven't really kept up on the trial process. But the fact that we already have individuals that can see the power of OSINT, that go looking for these type of individuals and then try to, you know, harm them and post a bunch of things on their pages, is scary to me. Because while this individual, you know, there might be a few in the crowd that are saying, well, this individual did something bad, she should be rebuked by society. Well, that's fine, but she also has the right to a trial by jury, which can be tainted by these kinds of actions and things. And it's not just happening to personal individuals as well. So this is another case that I think hopefully a lot more of you guys are familiar with, but Suitable for Framing was a little shop, I think in Colorado. And they received a lot of backlash in the news because there was a person that went to Trump's inauguration. She wanted to get her photos framed, I guess, and they refused to frame the photos, which they have the right to do. They're a business and they can turn away customers all they want to. But because it was aired in the way that it was aired, this company received so much hate and negative publicity that their Yelp page literally had to shut down. So in the first photo, this is from their Facebook account. They have hundreds of comments on there at the time. I think this was like right around the time, actually. So these are pretty accurate. Hundreds of negative comments about the company, about their practices. A lot of these people don't even live in the state that they would, you know, that an individual would go to get these photos framed in. And then it was interesting because it also had a huge impact on their Yelp review. I don't know if you can see it, but they have a 1-star and a 2-star, where if you looked at the cache pages, maybe like a couple days prior, this was like a, you know, 4.5-star company. And so when you think about how much power something like this has, something like, you know, posting a negative review via open source, you can literally DOS somebody's Yelp page just by posting, you know, 80 negative reviews, which if you have the time, is, you know, go for it. But it's insane to think that that can actually happen today. And that's what did happen in the case of Suitable for Framing, right? Another topic that I like to talk about in open source intelligence is ethics. And this is because, again, like this kind of stuff, right? Where is the ethics in this? How are we training people to interact and make positive moral decisions when they have the ability to do something as horrible as posting 80 negative comments to a Yelp page, right? How do we teach students to learn about open source intelligence when there are so many gray areas? So many gray areas. One of the things that I've learned, or one of the things that I learned during my course of study in open source was how to get information from Facebook. And one of the people that I learned it from, he used to work for the government, and one of the things that he told us to do was create a fake Facebook. Now, anybody that does anything with Facebook will tell you that to create a fake Facebook is a violation of their terms of agreement. or terms of service, sorry. So technically that's highly, highly unethical. And then I have people on the other side of the aisle saying, well, if it's for law enforcement and you're learning about it and, you know, how to protect individuals from it and this and that. So there's really this back and forth between what's ethical, what's not ethical. I've heard arguments on the other side of the room from being, okay, well, you know, it's unethical for the company to mandate that you use your real name to create a Facebook. I mean, all of these different things that just confuse students that are trying to navigate these waters in an ethical way. There's even more ethical issues, right? There's disinformation. There's people putting things out there that people take at face value, especially we saw this with all the fake news that's going out there. Makes us question the accuracy of everything, the credibility of everything, the reliability of everything. There's also a chance for people to abuse power, and it brings into questions of integrity. A lot of exploitation. So I'm going to get into, I think I have a couple more examples about how people are being exploited by open source intelligence. And I already talked about privacy. And another thing that's kind of an ethical issue is aggregation, right? Even though I might not have a full picture of what's going on, if I can get all of these different news sources or all of these different social media posts, I can get a pretty clear picture of what's going on. And sometimes what people have been able to find is they can kind of start putting together information that should be confidential or classified, whether that's intelligence or whether that's company level data, right? There is one organization that likes to toot its own horn as being kind of the be-all and end-all in open source intelligence, and that's the Open Source Intelligence and Research Association. And they do have a code of ethics, but it's weird. When I look at this, there's so many things that I think are missing and that aren't encompassed by their code of ethics. Responsibility, take responsibility for your own actions, professionalism, credibility, be a personal example. I don't really know, again, what that really means. I feel like that's another gray area. You know, everybody, I think that when you're writing a code of ethics, it has to be a very, very standard and strict thing for people to follow. Because, I mean, with so much people claiming for subjectivity and things like that today, it's really important to be really clear in the types of ethics that we're putting out. Sense of mission, again, their mission's really vague, so it kind of creates, again, another gray area. Comradeship, again, I don't really know if that's something that belongs in a code of ethics. I mean, I like the idea of helping out other OSINT researchers, but what I was really looking for when I started researching open source intelligence and ethics is how do I teach students to be honest, to be reliable, and to really meet all of those ethical issues that I talked about in the previous slide. And it's funny because the only source that I found that even came close to what I was looking for was from NPR, their standards for how they navigate social media. And it was really fascinating to see that there really is no clear code of ethics. And so that's why students are navigating this gray area. And that's why people in open source intelligence are navigating this gray area with no repercussions and having a difficult time just figuring out, you know, how to continue on in the process. So here's kind of another ethical issue here. This guy, it was a very interesting case. He would target women that were over 40 who were divorced and widowed or disabled, and he would target them for dates. And I guess what he would do is he would contact them online, he would appear interested, he would go on a couple of dates with them, maybe even send them a couple items and things like that, ask you for money, to cash checks and to forward packages, and then he would just disappear. And there are so many cases, I can't even tell you how many cases I've read of this, where it's an online dating scam, it's a Craigslist scam. There's so many Craigslist murders that are happening today, and all of this is being enabled, I should say, by open sources like social media, online communities, internet chat rooms, and things like that. This was also a huge ethical issue, right? At the dawn of fake news and its repercussions on social media. So this was a really interesting case because Law enforcement, in conjunction with the Los Angeles Times, released a statement. I guess there was a bunch of things going around on social media basically saying that there was checkpoints, immigration checkpoints all throughout Southern California. And it created such a panic that people were literally starting to go into these law enforcement agencies and say, like, you know, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm just here. Just, you know, take me away, essentially. And there was a bunch of people fleeing to churches. So it created a huge, huge panic. And when we think about the fact that it drove a couple people or one people, or in this case, many people to churches or to the law enforcement, you know, it's a serious issue and it has serious repercussions on our society. And it also goes to show the dangers of how social media and these open sources can be used against individuals. There's also a really interesting story that I always like to bring up. There's also individuals that use open source and sources to find people that are scamming and hurting other people. This one's a really good story. It's by Christian Hashek, and he basically found this guy that scammed him. I think it was like $500 all through open sources. He checked out his eBay name, he went through his Facebook name, and it just goes on and on into how he ended up finding his scammer. But again, at the same time, while it's impressive that Christian was able to do this, it's also terribly frightening, especially when we in the tech world know that most individuals are likely to use the same password across platforms. Most individuals are likely to use the same usernames across platforms. And when we start thinking about this, what this means for password and user protection, it has huge repercussions. And that's what I'm going to get into. So as I said earlier, intelligence is really something that we're always after, especially when we think about open sources. We want to take all of this data and aggregate it into something that's going to be meaningful. And this is because I always say data plus information equals knowledge, and knowledge equals power. If we know all of these things about our individual, about a target, about a company, we can start to assess how different things are done, whether it's how many computers they have, who is in charge of, you know, their tech house, who's in charge of accounting, who's in charge of sales, who are going to be the low-hanging fruit that we send our, you know, any type of phishing scam to, who's going to be the type of people that, you know, are going to be vulnerable to these types of things. And while you can think about this from the red teaming perspective, from, like, you know, the blue teaming perspective, how do we start protecting against this kind of stuff? If we know that all of this information is out there and it makes individuals vulnerable, how can we start to shape people's opinions and guide them in a way that's making them choose to think about the information that they're putting out into society? And again, here's just some of the things that you can get all from open sources: name, date of birth. Sometimes you can get social security number. Likes and dislikes can be huge when you're thinking about how people formulate passwords. Bank accounts, favorite places, aliases online, any type of social media. Files is a huge one. So you can get all of this kind of stuff if you know how to look and where to look. So real quickly, I kind of want to take you guys through what that would be, because I know I talk a lot about, okay, well, I can research this individual and I can start to generate passwords or try to generate sophisticated phishing attacks against individuals or companies. And I think a lot of people are confused about how that would happen. So I'm gonna put a little disclaimer out there. I had permission to collect the following and show you the results of the collection process, at least what I can legally show you. There's gonna be a lot of black that you guys are gonna see, and that's all of the information that I was asked to hide about what you're about to see. But I really hoped that you can kind of begin to see how these tools, how all of this different knowledge can be used against an individual, or in this case, against a very high-ranking person in a company. So I have my target here. We're going to call him A. This is a very popular people search engine called Spokeo. And we can already start to see a lot of data populating this page. Now, the interesting thing about Spokeo is that a lot of things are hidden behind a payment system, right? It'll only show you the user's name, age, I think the 3 or 5 most recent relatives, and I think the top 3 locations, but that's it. But what's interesting is, even though these pages say that they're protecting personal information by hiding it behind the payment system, that's not the case, because when you go to view source, which is always going to be your friend to the end, you can start to get all of this sensitive information that you shouldn't have had access to. So for example, here, I can get the latitude and longitude for this previous address that was here. And if I type this latitude and longitude into something like Google Maps, I can see that these two pictures are exactly the same in every way. So I know that that is the correct latitude and longitude of my target. And again, if this is going to be somebody that's sending you the letter asking for money, or the person that's going to be digging through your garbage for information on where you bank at or things like that, these are all very important steps. Enumeration, right? I always like to cross-reference my information as well, so I'll turn to a site like People to try and figure out if the information that I'm seeing is correct. Now, People is another people search engine. It's a little bit less guarded than Spokeo. Spokeo, again, hides most of its information behind the payment system, whereas People does not. So here we can get our target's name, his birthday. It provides his phone numbers, which is something the previous website didn't, additional aliases, and it provides us a lot more address information. So again, even though I'm not getting it from one place, I'm getting it from another place, right? And so far, I haven't paid for anything. It's all free. It's all available. I'm just figuring out where to look and digging deeper. Yeah, so one of the things I want to point out here is for this, the picture that you're seeing right here, this target's phone number was actually the second phone number that you see, the very first 914 number. That was literally his phone number, and his personal cell phone number. And he's like, I don't want to say his position in the company, but he was very high up in the company. So for his personal cell phone number to be the second thing that shows up on People was terrifying. And then again, I searched him via another People search engine. And again, I'm just getting more aliases, getting his age, getting more addresses. And this time I got a lot more numbers. And again, if I was going to be social engineering this individual, I would be calling these numbers, right? And even though these websites say that they're hiding everything behind the payment login system, they're not. It's still there, which is terrifying. Because again, ViewSource is your friend. I go to ViewSource, and everything that should have been hidden behind the payment system is available on ViewSource. And that doesn't make any sense because technically there's no law being broken, right? I haven't broken any law by going to ViewSource, which is terrifying, like I said. And so there's all these things, and this is how you know that this site isn't a secure website either. This is also something that's good to generate a bird's eye view of all the connections that your target has come into contact with. So this one is called Spock, and what it does is it does a network analysis of your target. So you can see that we have our target here. It does a network analysis of all of his relatives, and it does a network analysis of all of the places that he's lived, as well as places that he's worked. So if I wanted to make this go even further, I could expand his network and see who they are connected to, and so on and so forth. And so again, I can just cross-reference all of this information to make sure that the person that I'm targeting is the correct person. And again, this just builds a stronger sense of the information that I'm looking at is actually correct. Okay, and you can see I've clicked on his network here and I've expanded it to really show you guys what, everything that I can get about this one individual. And there's a lot, and I tried to blur most of it and black it out as best I could. Okay, now here's the money shot, right? Here's the thing that really killed me about this company when I was researching this individual. I typed in his name, and it immediately took me to his place of business. And it gives you kind of this business overview about what this company looks like internally. It gives you the address, gives you the company phone number, gives you their website. I found it fascinating. They tried to estimate the number of employees that were there, annual revenue between $5 and $10 million. It tells you how many years they've been in business. It gives you kind of the square footage of what they think the building might be, but they already give you the address, so that's something that can easily be gotten. What I find really fascinating is the number of PCs. They're already starting to network, or they're already starting to diagram what that network would look like, 10 to 24 PCs, and it is a small business. We can also see all the different types of expenses that they incur to the right. And again, we can see credit capacity, but it's interesting though, because even though it provides, if you can see up here, if you guys can see my pointer, but it provides us the address, to this location. And then we can also see that they have telecom expenses, utilities expenses. So if I'm really going to be, you know, that deep into my red teaming, I'm going to try and do a social engineering attack from one of these utility companies that's from that area, right? I mean, it's just logical. And that's the same thing. So the person that you're looking at here is actually in this position right here. So the fact that you can find out all of this information about this one individual is startling. And then to make it even more startling, the fact that we were searching for the guy that's the manager and we found 2 presidents of the company is even more horrifying, right? Like, we shouldn't be able to start seeing this whole company architecture just by looking at one individual. Yeah, this one was definitely a horrifying case. And then was even interesting, I did analysis for any type of documents that I could find related to the company and related to this particular individual. And I found somehow through, you know, somehow in the cyberspace, I found a whole list of all these different types of internal documents, whether it was contracts, whether it was this, what you guys are seeing right here is a internal supplier list. And as a competitor or as somebody that's trying to target this company, it's something that's there's a couple different applications that I use to track information. This one specifically is Microsoft Excel, but there's a whole host of tools and then tips and things like that that I want to share with you guys if I ever get to do a tech talk presentation, because there's so many cool things out there that help you guys aggregate data. Like Maltego is a really good one that's really popular in the OSINT community, but there's so many different tools. There's Excel, tips and tricks, all that good stuff. But yeah, this one's a suppliers list. And this one was horrifying as well. Like I said, I found contracts. I found some old uploaded social security numbers. It was definitely an interesting case. I also did social media analysis as well to see how this individual could be vulnerable via his social media. And he didn't really have too much activity via social media, which was good, but he did have a lot of things that he liked. He did have his birthday and things like that public. He did have his email address public, and these are all things that, again, just make you that target. And I focus on target hardening, making sure that you really lock down all the types of information that you have out there that make you vulnerable. And again, this is just some of the information that we were able to gain from just a couple of slides that I showed you. You know, and it's crazy because when we start thinking about how easy it is to make just a general, general word list that we can feed into a password generator, this becomes horrifying, because anybody that's in research or cybersecurity research knows the most popular passwords for the for almost every year, it seems, is 12345 or password 123 or just password 1, and these go on and on and on. And this is across platforms, this is across usernames as well, right? And one of the ways that I also wanted to try and start protecting students at CSUSB, which is where I was an adjunct for a little bit, is I created an assignment called the Digital Dossier Assignment. And basically what this did is it forced students to take a look at how much personal information they have out there about themselves. And I encourage anybody to do that, really. You really need to know what's out there, just in case you get a call from your bank saying, hey, we have suspicious activity, can you give us your bank, we just want to verify your bank account number with you before we cancel this activity. I mean, there's so many things that I've heard from different people and different stories and different types of scams that people fall victim to, that you really need to know the type of information that's available out there about you. So when I had students complete this assignment, most of them were stunned at the types of information they were finding about themselves. I had a couple of students that tried to get away with the assignment saying, oh, I couldn't find any information about myself, but then it really kicked into high gear because then I took it as a challenge, and yeah, then we both found information about them. And almost all of them, when they completed the assignment, were astounded at how much personal information is out there about them and how this information in some way to them makes them vulnerable. Whether it's, I didn't know that by liking my bank on Facebook, like it tells somebody, hey, this person probably banks here, to all of these different things. And most of the students were really terrified at how easy it is to find information about them. Even in my place of work, actually, most people are terrified when they ask me to find something on somebody, or, you know, research this thing, and I can do it very quickly, because even just teaching them how to research themselves properly also teaches them how to research other things properly. I also had some students that had some very shocking things that they found about themselves. I had one student that wasn't aware that his criminal DUI that just happened 4 months ago was already online. And it was, you know, you just typed in his name and it came up. And I felt really sorry for him, because what does that mean for him when he's applying for jobs? Or what does that mean for him, you know, when he's trying to get house and mortgage and all these different things? So again, has repercussions, and we need to know what's out there. My next advice to him was to talk to the organization that put him up about taking it down. And again, I think it's funny, because actually since I've started OSINT at CSUSB, we've come a long way. We have our own club. We've gone to DEF CON 25. I plan to go again to DEF CON next year, participate in the CTF. But we've gone a long ways. And I think it just goes to show you, a lot of people are interested in open sources. A lot of people are, I think, frightened by what you can do with open sources. And a lot of people really just, you know, are fascinated by it. And so what do you do now? You protect yourself. And you protect yourself by keeping your systems updated. Remember Exploit Tuesday, Patch Wednesday, implementing a strong password policy. That's one of the things that I often find is after I do kind of like a password analysis and I submit that to the individual that I targeted, they're always surprised to find at least one of their passwords is on there. And so then we start implementing a password management system, and that kind of helps them. Also, protect your privacy. Just remember that the companies that, you know, or I should say the places that you're sticking your personal information, that becomes the company's information, right? So Facebook's actively engaged in the process of buying and selling your information. So is Google. Anything that you post on them belongs to them. And that's the same thing with a lot of these other websites as well. But you can always try and find ways to get your information offline. A lot of these websites have opt-out policies as well. And then again, humans are the weakest link in any security policy. So when we're thinking about how we can mitigate this at a company level, again, have your companies research themselves, or have your employees research themselves. Know about the types of information that are out there about you, because that'll instantly tell you, hey, like, I know that this person's calling me about this. That's publicly available. Like, what does this mean? It means you're probably going to need verification, and definitely don't give any numbers away. And then we need a bottom-up approach, not top-down approach, because cybersecurity is everybody's business. I'm sorry, I know we're kind of running out of time here. So if you guys have any comments or questions, I'll take them now. And if you guys want to talk to me offline about this, again, this is a subject that I'm very passionate about. I have a lot of good stuff on this. I had to kind of cram all of these different things into the 40-minute session here. But yeah, I'm always available, and I'm always willing to share kind of my research with you guys. Any questions? Okay, well, if you guys don't have any questions, okay, so what tool I use? Like I said, Maltego is probably a big one for me. I also use some Excel stuff that I've done personally. I kind of made my own Excel sheets. And if that's something that you're interested in, I could share that with you. All you would have to do is write me at anastacia.webster@csusb.edu. Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of tools out there. There's a whole toolkit. Okay, so that's a really good question. How can we get this information removed from these open intelligence sources? Like I said, okay, so most times when you go to, most times when you sign up for like a website, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, sometimes Nike, sometimes even Bank of America, right? You automatically opt in to their information privacy policies, whatever that might be. So in order to get off of these types of sites, you have to opt out. And you can do the same things with these sites, these people search engines that are collecting all this information. So I know People has an opt-out site, Spokeo has an opt-out site. They all have opt-out sites. Which really sucks about this process, though, I gotta warn you, is you have to go to all of these like sketchy, like backdoor, like like links and channels and just to get it taken off. And so, I mean, it is a process, but I constantly am looking for things about myself and pulling it off. And it's so crazy because I feel like once I take it off one, it like immediately, I already see it trying to populate on other things. And what I've done in my research in the past like year has been trying to map where all these people search engines kind of feed information to and where they take information from. It's been really interesting because I find most of them kind of get information from the same places, which probably means we're looking kind of more at a large broker that's kind of, you know, the person that I need to opt out of giving my information. But I really haven't figured out what it is yet. Okay, so how to be ethical in a non-ethical world? That is the question, seriously. So like I said, I have a background in criminology and I'm super, super interested in these types of actions that I see people take. And it just blows my mind that it's such a gray area. Like I said, there's no clear ethical standards as to this is what you should be doing when we think about open sources. This is what we should be doing when we think about how we engage open sources. And I think this kind of stems to the fact that we don't really have any clear privacy distinctions in open source intelligence, and that we don't have people that are out there advocating for it, right? Like these victims that I talked about in this presentation, right? How can we go about, like, you know, how can these victims find a voice and start petitioning for stronger protection rights and stronger privacy rights? Because I think that's kind of a step in the direction that we need to go. And I think that's the way that we build our ethics from, right? If we have a clear set of this is the way we protect information and this is the way information stays private, then we can build clear ethical guidelines from that. But until then, we're kind of like throwing out our ethics, like, you know, or throwing ethics out there that might not necessarily be addressing the problem. Does searching for your own information trigger the site to start collecting information on you that it would not have had before? So pretty much, I'm going to say no. I've only ever typed in a name and then begun from there. And then once I start getting more things, I'll add to it. But I mean, you never type in like your full name, address, phone number, and then boom, right? I always start off with the least amount of information I can possibly give. And then I go a little bit further. And I don't really use Google too much. So when I'm doing something like this, I'll use like DuckDuckGo or search engines that don't necessarily collect my information. So a list of favorite search engines used for OSINT. There's actually a really, really good one. I think it's called, it was at DEF CON, they released it. Hold on. I think it's called OSINT Workflow. I'm trying to make sure it's the right one here before I, okay. Yeah, I think it's like OSINT Workflow or something to that degree, but that one's really cool. And so, Michael Basil, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of him. He has a whole list of things that are on his INTELTECHNIQUES website, and those are all really cool as well. Okay, so do you recommend burner phones and emails? I recommend using Google Voice Number when interacting with any business. So I actually have some good news for you. Yes, I do. I actually have what's known as the pseudo app. Any of you guys with the iPhone, I think it'll work for iPhone 5s as well. iPhone 5 and up can get the pseudo app. The pseudo app enables you to have 9 different phone numbers. So yeah, I currently have 9 phone numbers. I'll use a burner phone, like mainly like for DEF CON when I'm really like worried about that. And that's something you can get at T-Mobile and like easily throw away, right? Emails, yeah, there's tons of email sites out there. I know really popular ones like 33 Mail or 10-Minute Mail. Those ones are all pretty popular. And those ones I pretty much use pseudo app for the majority of my things, because pseudo app gives you the email, it gives you a phone number, and it also gives you a secure virtual credit card. But I think the credit card right now is down until they modify that. But yeah, all of that's kind of included in this one app, so I really like that one. But yeah, whenever I have to like give like, whenever you have to purchase something online or something like that, you really want to use things that kind of obscure your location and a little bit of information about yourself. Again, only because I'm so paranoid about where my information is going and who has it and who's going to have it and who's going to have access to it and what they're going to be doing with it. And I think if a lot more people were just a little bit more paranoid, there'd be a lot more people that were protecting information. We wouldn't see as many people, be victims of these crimes. Any other questions? Okay, yeah, so I've actually used, I've used a couple of these actually. I've used HTTPS everywhere. That one is interesting because I kind of get some pushback from campus techs on that one. I haven't tried Privacy Badger or Decentralites, and I haven't tried Quantum Firefox with uBlock Origin either. I don't know. Yeah, those ones looked. Who's EFF? Yeah, I use so let me see if I can really quick type in, or let's escape this real quick. Let's stop the share. Let me show you some of the stuff that I kind of used for this. Okay, so I'm gonna go to OSINT framework real quick, and then we'll go to and then we'll go to Mike's site because his site's really good. So let me share this with you. Hold on. Oops. Okay, let's just close all this stuff real quick. Okay, share screen. Okay, so this is the one I was talking about earlier. This is OSINT framework. It kind of, all you have to do is kind of click on here and it kind of makes things easier. And it'll give you a whole bunch of different search engines and things that are in relation to it. You can look at business records and go from there and get a whole bunch of things from all of these. And I've played around with a lot of these. I mainly do a lot of social networking stuff, only just because it seems like you can get so much good information from social network, but it really depends on the target and the things that you're looking for. And then another thing that's always really good is the INTELTECHNIQUES website by Mike Basil. And I don't know if you guys have heard of his books. His books are always like the hottest selling thing at DEF CON, I think, especially for the recon villages. But his stuff is really, really remarkable. He's got a lot of really cool stuff that goes on in these books. And I recommend these books to anybody that's really serious about open source or just trying to learn more about it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check into the stuff that you guys recommended here because definitely interested in this stuff. But yeah, I would say like probably also if you guys are really interested, like I said, go to DEF CON. They always, I mean, this last year they released that OSINT framework website, and then they also released a password generator on GitHub. It was super cool. Everybody was like really excited. But a lot of them were okay, so use the new Firefox and set your set fault search engine to DuckDuckGo or a start page. So it's really cool also because if you have one of Mike Basil's books, he also has his own personal kind of Firefox that he built that you can kind of download that automatically will open up into the INTELTECHNIQUES page, but then also has a DuckDuckGo and a couple of other search engines as a start page. Any other questions or comments? You guys are like on this stuff too. Everybody's fascinated by it. Just because the information's out there, it's horrifying. And like I said, if you guys are interested too, like I have tons of case studies as well as how the stuff's being used by credit freezes. I know Michael does in his books. He's like, if you're not going to be using your credit, you should freeze it. I personally don't freeze my credits, but then again, I'm like a really low-hanging fruit. If I was probably somebody that was a lot more important, I probably would. But yeah, Michael says you should freeze your credit if you're not using it. I don't really have the need to. So a lot of it, I mean, we always come back to that question in cybersecurity, like, are we compromising security for usability, right? There's like that huge little debate. And so for me personally, I don't really see the need to use it. I use like secure virtual credit cards for most things, so I'm not hyper paranoid about things. And I also lucky enough to have what's it called, a few credit monitoring services going for me. So Yeah, yeah, I would recommend that. I mean, like I said, somebody that I was kind of, let's just say I have, because of 2 years ago, I had to get credit monitoring services. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so what do you mean by, are there any tools to see if your data are protected? I mean, I can see where Krebs would say that, but it's like I get notifications at any single change in my credit. So I think there's some good ones out there. I don't think that that's the whole picture because I mean, if there's like, if it bumps up a point or down a point, I get a notification. So I think there are some good ones out there. Any certification recommendations? If we're specifically talking about OSINT, it's really weird because there's no real certification in open source intelligence. There really isn't. I would say probably my biggest thing would probably be at least getting Student Security Plus or CISSP, and that's only because it has that whole ethics section in there, and that's something that I think that, at least in the research that I've done, can transfer over to hopefully them making good decisions about open sources. But that's kind of the only reason I'd say, either one of those. But there is no real certification for open sources, which is horrifying because, like I said, all these people are out there doing it. Okay. Like I said, I'm still kind of, I want to answer your question. Are there any tools to see if your data are protected? I'm not sure what you mean by there, like files? Are you talking about like information that you can find on the web or like a website? Files in your system. I would say that one's a tough one because that's not really my area. I would say probably a standard, what's it called? A standard security system for your computer would probably do that. Or we just had someone say FRP. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Well, I will get back to writing you guys all emails, and I hope you guys all have a happy holidays. And again, if you're interested in sharing a presentation for CAE Forum, let us know. We're always happy to have you guys present on here. So that's it for me for today, guys. Hope you guys all have a happy holidays. Bye.